I'm Matt Eden, the host of Park Bench here in Madison. I'm joined by Jim Hawk with Neighbor2Neighbor, and we're going to be talking through what exactly Neighbor2Neighbor is, as well as what their goals are in Madison. So, Jim, for the viewers, could you explain exactly what Neighbor2Neighbor is and kind of what your goals are?
Sure. So Neighbor2Neighbor started over 25 years ago. We're founded by and continue to be led by neighborhood leaders from across Davidson County. Our purpose is to help neighbors succeed at preserving and improving their neighborhood. We don't go in to tell them what to do or what they need to be doing, but really give them some tools for whatever project they're working on so that they can succeed at that.
Absolutely. What is your biggest achievement for Neighbor2Neighbor?
Well, at the heart of it, anytime a group of neighbors get together and work on something and are successful at it, that to us is a big success. So we have seen things like a neighborhood in East Nashville that has really just been inundated with developments,
right,
coming together and always being in conflict about what they want and what they don't. And we were able to help them think through what they wanted. And now they have a plan that they can use when they're dealing with developers and say, this is really who we want to be as a neighborhood. And these are the things that we're going to expect you to do as a developer. And actually that not only helps all the neighbors to feel better, it helps the developers to feel better. So we've even had developers say, particularly for that neighborhood, I wish every neighborhood in Davidson County had that kind of a plan,
right,
because we really know what they want and we're able to adjust our plans to that. So that's a huge success.
Yeah.
And we just, and things like going into neighborhoods and working with them, and their biggest concern was crime.
Right.
And watching that crime rate drop to half of what it was and then drop again. Those kind of things are for me, what makes me happiest. Because it's not about what I'm doing. It's really about what the neighbors are doing.
Absolutely.
Right?
So kind of transitioning a little bit away from your day-to-day operations to more of like the Good Neighbor Festival, could you kind of talk us through what that is and kind of what the contributions go to from that?
Sure. So the Good Neighbor Day Festival started 8 years ago. And when I first, and it was actually 10 years ago, this is the 8th one, but the COVID factor, right?
Yeah.
So when I started at Neighbor2Neighbor as a staffer, what I realized was everybody was coming through the door talking about the problems they were having in their neighborhood.
Right.
Well, the reality is there's a lot of good things happening in the neighborhood. So we started by beginning to celebrate neighborhoods and the importance of neighborhoods, which should be a no-brainer, but everybody likes to talk about neighborhoods, but they don't always like to do anything about it.
Right.
And so by celebrating about it, eventually we merged and came with this idea of the Good Neighbor Day Festival, which is really all about celebrating the importance of being a good neighbor and making a positive difference right where you live, right?
So what are some of the classes that you guys offer? You talked about the scholarships. What are those? Yeah. What does it look like?
So we have our Emerging Neighborhood Leaders Academy. And that is really for people who feel like they want to take on a leadership role in their neighborhood. And by going there, they get to understand what a neighborhood organization is, what's it mean to be a leader of a neighborhood organization. We look at metro government and how it works and how it doesn't, right? We look at how do you engage neighbors. So it's really a primer for people who are going to really get involved. One of our board members, the former board members, always said, neighborhoods are really the doorway to democracy.
Right.
And that is so true. And so if we're preparing people to be part of their neighborhood organization, we're investing in the future of Nashville. There are 13 members of Metro Council who have gone through our different training programs, wow, right? Current members. So that's a lot of people who are experienced, and when we see a council that is much more concerned about neighborhoods today than even a few years ago. And so that's one of them. We have what's called the planning school, which helps people understand this whole metro planning and zoning process, right? So we did a survey back in 2018 and discovered that that most of the people that were on, we had 28 people on our council from across Davidson County.
Right.
Most of them said that their neighbors did not understand how the planning process works.
Right.
So we now have a school that people can go through, and it's like 6 hours class. But at the end of it, you go through that, and you're really able to engage the developers and the Metro Council members better.
That's
so
fantastic.
We're excited about that. And on the 10th of September, we're actually going to have our very first conference on neighborhood disaster preparedness and response. Wow. Because we're seeing more tornadoes, more floods, excessive heat. And in our experience over the last 5 years, we realized that neighborhood groups weren't prepared for that.
Right.
And the reality is, for every dollar you spend preparing for disaster, you save $4 in recovery.
Wow.
Right? And time is cut because people who understand the process, the recovery process, are going to be able to work through that. If you're struggling to understand the process at the same time you're going through it, it just slows everybody down.
Absolutely.
So those kinds of classes, we have our conference for neighborhoods in April, which is C4 in Nashville. We bring together about 300 people each year to talk about things that are happening in our neighborhoods and how we can create positive change. So those are our main flagship training programs, but then we do a lot of other things throughout the year as well.
Wow, that's really impressive. I think for me, as someone who both lives and works in Madison, I love what you guys are doing, and I'll definitely be involved in the future. So I think on behalf of Madison, we'd like to thank you. Now, as far as Madison specifics, we're getting ready to do the Good Neighbor Festival in Madison. What kind of special events do you guys have planned? What are kind of the headline activities of that?
Well, and let me talk about how we came to Madison, because I think that's really important. We learned this a few years ago. We don't just choose a place. We go to the Metro Council members and the neighborhood leaders, the business leaders, and we ask for a community meeting. So we sat down back in 2019 before COVID, and we asked them, would you like to host the Good Neighbor Day Festival? Because we're just not going to bring it in here. And they had a unanimous decision that evening. Yes, we're going to have it.
Right.
And then we asked them where, and all of them said Cedar Hill Park. So we're going to have it there. Now, what is this event? It is like most festivals that you go to. There's going to be music. There's going to be food. There's going to be a lot of fun activities. I think the difference is how it feels when you come to one of these events. It really feels like a community event, not a nicely polished, perfect, festival where you're oohed and awed. But the ooh and awe really comes because we engage a lot of different community groups in the Madison area to create activities for it.
Right.
So we have the Madison Suburban Utility District. They're doing something for this event. I think we have over 25 different community groups, and each one of them is hosting an activity that people can enjoy.
Wow.
So it's kind of really a community planned event, and I want to make sure people understand this is for everybody.
Right.
When you come to this event, you're going to see little signs. You're not just going to see a welcome to Good Neighbor Day. You're going to see that in 15 different languages.
Wow.
Right? And you're going to see a very diverse festival. And so I'm excited about it because we really work hard to make everybody feel welcome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think it'll be great. I'll definitely be there myself. Hopefully some of our viewers will. I'd like to say thank you for joining us, and definitely love what you're doing. And ultimately it's just beautiful to see neighbors coming together.
It is. Thanks, Matt.